15 years ago, I started my digital marketing agency. It was only me and my business partner, and we made every mistake in the book. But fast forward to today, we've grown that business to $7 million per year with over 47 full-time employees, and we made the Inc. 5000 list of fastest growing companies in the United States 4 years in a row. I also had the pleasure of helping over 150 other agencies hit seven figures inside of our community, the Seven Figure Agency. But what I realized is that I've never really publicly told my story. So in this video, I'm going to share my full journey of how we went from a struggling two-person agency to building a multi-million-dollar per year business with all the mistakes, breakthroughs, and lessons along the way. Let's dive in. My entrepreneurial journey started when I launched my first web design and hosting company back in 2000. It was called Developcom, and I was young, I was ambitious, I was excited. I thought, this is going to be the future, right? I'm going to learn how to build websites, I'm going to get people online, and it's going to be amazing. Thing was, I didn't know how to really build websites, and I didn't really know how to run a marketing agency, and I didn't really know what I was doing. I went out and kind of researched like what would be the easiest way to get this started and to learn how to do this type of thing. And I found a franchise called AIS Media at the time. Not even sure if they're still around. They had a $10,000 franchise fee. Basically, it gave you license to white label their stuff and was apparently going to teach you how to run an agency. I was like, hey, look, that sounds like the smart move, right? Only thing is, I don't have $10,000 either. I grew up in an amazing family. I've got amazing parents that always took great care of me and 3 older sisters. However, there wasn't a lot of financial abundance. My dad was a missionary, and so I literally grew up the first 10 years of my life in Haiti, a little island in the Caribbean, as a missionary's kid. You know anything about missionary families, money isn't the thing, right? The thing is to serve others and to spread the gospel. My dad had abundance in his life. He just didn't have a lot of financial resources. The only person I needed to ask was my dad, right? And I've got 3 older sisters. They were all kind of in their adult years at this point. But I went to my dad and said, hey, look, I really want to start this web company. I need to borrow some money. Could you lend me $10,000? Honestly, asking for $10,000 from my father at that time would have been like asking for hundreds of thousands of dollars. Like literally there wasn't a lot to draw from. You know, my dad believing in me and being ever the optimist was like, yes, you lent me the money and more. Actually, I think about it. He also got me some computers and he got me some additional equipment, but he lent me the money. And for the better part of about 2 years, me, my girlfriend at the time, Yesenia, who's now my wife, and my business partner, Joseph, just beat our heads against the wall, right? We tried the AIS Media thing and, just didn't have any idea how to land clients, how to deliver the results. Felt like what we were being charged to deliver from AIS Media was way too much and couldn't convince the local businesses we needed to work with to charge it that amount. So we had to figure out how to build the websites anyways, totally abandoned the AIS Media play, just really circled our tails for a very, very long time. I started getting better at cold calling. I started getting better at sitting in BNI meetings and getting referrals. We started to land some website deals, but it was wrong model completely. Literally charging $1,000 to $2,000 for a website, charging $10 to $15 a month for hosting, hoping that eventually it would get somewhere. But the reality was, with 3 people involved in the business, with 3 mouths to feed, plus the expenses, we got a little office, we were paying for leads, we were paying for marketing expenses. If I look back at that time, as hard as I worked, I literally generated zero. They might have been $10,000 or $15,000 months, but all of it was reinvested. None of it was put in our pockets. We would have all made more money had we all gotten a job at Blockbuster at the time or at Burger King or Starbucks. Literally, there was zero income. After several years, I had to face reality. My wife and I, girlfriend at the time, Yesenia, we wanted to get married, right? We wanted to start our lives, and I didn't have enough money to do anything, let alone put together a good life for us. And so the hard thing at this point in my life was, first of all, I didn't want to face failure. Second of all, my dad had lent me that money, and I really needed to make it work. I needed to really get him those funds back. And it was one of the hardest things I had to do, to face reality and say, look, this isn't profitable. I don't know what I'm doing. I need to go get a job, right? I need to go back and get a job. It was very hard to kind of finally face the music with my dad and say, hey, this didn't work out, right? And I'm not going to be able to do it. Then I entered a kind of a learning phase because now I need to make an income. I didn't have a lot of experience at this point. And so what I did was I just got a job in business to business sales, right? I started working at a couple companies. I worked at Data Impact. I worked at ADP, a big payroll management company, fine-tuned my sales ability, the ability to get on the phone, get meetings with prospects, have good business conversations. As I was working B2B, a lot of commute, right? From where I lived to where these offices were, I became a massive student of the game. I fell in love with learning, and audio books, especially audible.com, was my jam. I just hours a day listening to the great books on business, on self-development. Some of the great ones, right? You kind of go back to Rich Dad, Poor Dad, amazing book about, how do you actually create wealth Wealth. And what is it really all about? Secrets of the Millionaire Mind by T. Harv Eker, The Secret by John Osseroff, The E-Myth Revisited by Michael E. Gerber. I listened to all of these books and I came to the conclusion that I definitely wanted to build a business, right? And I knew that in order to really have the kind of wealth and the kind of success I wanted in my life, I had to figure it out, right? And I had to be able to take those risks, and I had to eventually create a business that could create income and then invest that money into assets that could produce passive income, like the Shangri-La. I still didn't know how to do it, right? Or how to pull it off. And one thing resonated with me from the book, Secrets of the Millionaire Mind by T. Harv Eker. I recommend everybody listen to this. I've listened to it dozens and dozens of times. But there's one chapter where he talks about to be successful, you don't necessarily have to go start that business. You can enter the corridor. Enter the corridor by working in the type of business you'd like to be in. Find someone that's successful in that area. Work for them. Add value to them. Decide like, hey, maybe I would enjoy this business. Maybe I can figure out like what I did wrong in this and succeed. And so I took that. I was like, hey, that's a great idea. I really like internet marketing. I'd love to figure out how to be successful, helping businesses grow and scale. And so I was researching what are the successful digital marketing companies that are out there. And I landed on Reach Local. Reach Local at the time was doing about $250 million per year, obviously doing something right. And I was like, well, I'm going to go get a job there. I'm going to learn what I need to learn. I'm going to give it 110%. I got an opportunity to work at Reach Local, as a salesperson, an internet marketing consultant, and learned so much. My belief in what small businesses would pay, like I was thinking a couple $1,000s one time, turns out they'll pay thousands of dollars every single month. My belief that those services could be sold, my belief that it should be recurring based revenue, and how to sell these types of services. I picked up a lot while I was at Reach Local, and I was using my old playbook, right? I was cold calling into prospects, going and meet with them face to face, and I was sitting in BNI meetings. And as a salesperson at Reach Local, you sell the account and it enters into your book of business, and then you're responsible for maintaining it, right? That's your job. And so I was really monthly meeting with my clients and going through the reports and trying to show the ROI, and just frustrated that they weren't getting a great return on investment, that the only thing we had to sell was paid advertising. I decided, you know what? I think now I know how to sell these services. I've got a little different philosophy on how it could be packaged. I think the services could be different than just doing paid search. I'm ready to give this another shot. That's where I had entered the corridor. It was like, all right, I'm ready to give this another shot. And I launched at that point Click Incorporated, which was a internet marketing agency specifically for local businesses. We're thinking like roofers, doctors, dentists, a lot of the same verticals that we worked with at Reach Local. But the big differentiator was we were going to do full service. We're going to focus more on the organic side of the equation. This also helped to alleviate conflict of interest because Reach Local didn't provide those services, and we were able to say, hey, look, we're going to do like an SEO specific strategy for these industries. And I think the biggest takeaways that I had while I was at Reach Local were we need to charge monthly recurring. It needs to be greater than $1,000 per month, and it can be greater than $1,000 per month. And you need to have a more comprehensive service. And what you do, can't just be brochureware. Like I was building websites in my last agency. It needs to be something that's going to actually generate tangible, measurable results, not activity, but we're going to help our clients grow through whatever digital marketing strategies we can put into play. And so launched Click Incorporated, quickly realized, man, it's really hard to try and sell the roofer, the chiropractor, the auto repair shop. And I had a handful of those because, I had local referrals and I had BNI references and, I had that local play going. But two obstacles I kept hitting. First, when I would get a new industry that I had no experience in, they would say, oh, this sounds great. Hey, you sound like you're a good guy. It sounds like you probably know what you're doing. Who else have you worked with like me? Do you have any client references? And they'd be like, no, I really don't. We could try and figure it out together. And that would usually kill the deal. The other thing was every time we got a client that was, in a different industry, we had to reinvent the wheel. We had to figure out, okay, what are the key words? What are the selling propositions? How do we package this? And it was very hard to scale. By the way, I just want to say that if you're running an agency and you're looking to grow to 7 figures, we're currently offering free one-to-one agency acceleration sessions where we can help you implement the exact strategies that I implemented to grow our agency to multiple 7 figures. If you're interested in that, you can book that in the first link here in the description, and I'd love to connect with you and kind of help you accelerate your growth so you don't have to hit the same obstacles that I did. Back to the video. So we learned those lessons, and before long, I started to recognize, rather than trying to serve everybody, why don't we just focus on one particular industry? And we had hypothetical industries. Like we were like, hey, let's get a pocket of prospects in chiropractic, in eye doctors, in roofing, because we had maybe some experience in those. We could get a list of those. We could reach out to those. Our main play was restaurants. We're like, with these restaurant owners, they need this stuff. It's going to be great. We didn't really have much success. We didn't have much momentum in that niche. However, I had a client called Town Plumbing in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. We wanted to get the recurring revenue going, and so I was trying to get anybody we could. And we reached out to Wes Alcon from Town Plumbing. We met with him. We took him through our consultative sales process, kind of showed him what we thought we could do and what we're going to bring to the table with his website, with his SEO strategy. And he said yes, right? I think it was $1,500 a month, paid on check, unfortunately, but he was our first plumbing client. And I distinctly remember thinking, hey, you know what? That's great, right? We've got a plumbing client. We're still going to try and get the restaurants, but we got amazing results for Wes. Like, we literally got him ranked in a matter of months. He started seeing his phone volume go up. He referred us to somebody else. Before you knew it, we had 3 clients within the plumbing industry. We already started to have proof. We started to have case studies. We started to have a proven model, and it just became clear, every other client we took was a distraction and a diversion from us being able to get momentum and scale. Why don't we just focus on plumbing, become the very best of the best in this industry, and scale up from there? That's what we did, right? And we grew Click Incorporated from start to 7 figures in less than 2 years. And if we fast forward to today, it's grown to multiple 7 figures. Now, was it all a straight arrow from there? No, absolutely not, right? It was like, okay, we've got this plumbing industry that we're serving. We got a pretty good program. We got pretty good results, but there was a couple areas, like especially around the $1 million mark, where it felt like we were at a plateau, where it was really hard to break through. I'm trying to figure what can we do? How can we make this work? And what we realized was 2 big problems with our strategy. Number one, we were only doing SEO, right? And so SEO is great, right? We build the website, we do the organic, we get it to come up in Google and in the map listings, in the non-paid listings, but sometimes it takes a while. Sometimes it's going to take 3-4 months before they start to see some results. And if a client's going to pay us $1,500, $2,000, $3,000 per month, they want to see some results. We decided, hey, well, we need to do some paid search with this. We need to do some retargeting with this. We need to do a more comprehensive service offering. As we shifted from just doing SEO to doing more things. Today, if you think about it, we started to add paid search. We started to add local service ads. We started to add marketing automation and created a more comprehensive package. That made us much more sticky. It made us much more consistent with the results we were able to generate. And it also made us able to charge more and to command a higher premium for what we did. The other thing we realized in that $1 million to $2 million mark was there was some churn happening. Some of it was due to results. Some of it was due to the clients that we had chosen to work with. We were working with anybody from the one-man operator, and a lot of our clients were the one-man operator, to the larger $1 million, $10 million, $15 million plumbing HVAC home service company. What we realized was the clients that were a little larger, at least $1 million per year, they had their stuff together. Like, they had a dispatcher that was answering the phones. The plumber wasn't in the field turning the wrench, but he had an actual business. Those companies were better established, better prepared to handle the opportunities, really willing to give us the time to let our service generate results. And retention for those was extremely high, like 99%. And the retention with the smaller one-man operator was like 90%. We were losing like 10% of those. And so we made the hard decision at that point. Let's focus on the clients that are going to stick with us, the clients that we can get the best results for. And we started disqualifying our prospects. So if a prospect came in the plumbing or HVAC industry that was just one-man operator and they didn't spend marketing, we were going to convince them to invest with us. It was better to say no to those and just focus on the upper side of the equation. And those 2 things made a big difference in our ability to retain clients as we grew and as we scaled. The other thing that we did is, as we grew, when we started to say, hey, we want to be able to command a higher premium, we want to be able to have these clients stick with us long term, we recognized we needed to position ourselves as experts within the industry. So it wasn't just doing cold outreach anymore. We needed to put ourselves out there as industry experts. And so one of the first things we did was we published our book, How to Triple Your Sales by Getting Your Internet Marketing Right. We started doing webinars on a monthly basis. We got involved in the industry association and actually started showing up at the industry events with a booth and looking for opportunities to speak and share and connect. The combination of great results that we're getting for clients combined with great positioning within the industry, led to a very consistent, predictable growth within the organization. There was also a period of time within the industry where either me or Dean were just overwhelmed. Right? It was like I was selling, but I was also helping to build the websites and create content. And we recognized we need to build infrastructure. We need to put the team in place. Of course, we went back to all the great books, the E-Myth Revisited, and we started to study Traction by Gino Wickman and Implement EOS. The hiring order that we put in place that freed us to continue to grow the business and ultimately freed us to have a business that can operate without us is we started to look at where our time was being sucked within the organization and what was going to be the highest leverage thing we could do, the highest leverage place we can invest our time. First and foremost, operations. The building of the website, the creating of the content, the claiming of the directories. We needed to build a whole infrastructure around that. And so we hired an operations manager early, and then that operation manager had, web dev person, potentially SEO, content. The infrastructure to get the things done within the organization was the first priority. After that, as we got to like 15, 20, 30 clients and beyond, the next thing was account management, right? Because now I didn't have to deal with doing the work. We had a team to handle that. And of course, you're constantly checking in and making sure it's right and doing the 10-80-10, like give them 10% of direction, let them do 80% of the work, and then come back and check the last 10%. I was still involved in account management. I would sell the account and then operations would take it, but I would be on the conversations and I would be, kind of interfacing with the client and making sure they understood the value. And whether that was in the middle of the day or in the evening or on the weekend, whenever they reached out, it was coming to me. And so I recognized, wow, that's something we need to remove ourselves from right away. And me and my business partner, Dean, at the time, kind of toggled between him doing operations management and him kind of getting involved in account management. And we kind of shared responsibilities over time. And it was at that point we said, hey, we need some account management support, right? We need somebody that can be dedicated to onboarding these clients, to creating a class experience, to showing the value and keeping them engaged. This was a beautiful time to engage my wife, Yesenia, who had run our first company with me, had always been involved in kind of the strategy and the discussions behind the scenes. And I was like, hey, Yesenia, would you like to join the company in the account management capacity? And she did. And she joined. We actually decided to hire 2 account managers right out of the gates. That way we could train 2 people. We could get them up and running. We could, kind of introduce them to the clients and have that whole client relationship side of the equation squared away. And of course, the account management team has now grown to, I think like 8 full-time account managers, and Yesenia had 3 kids, and a lot of things have transitioned, but there was a period of time like that was a critical hire, right? And getting that process dialed in made a big difference in our retention, in our reputation in the industry, the amount of referrals that we were getting. So removed ourselves from those roles. From there, it really was, I was looking at my time, buy back your time. Where's my time going? A lot of my time was still on sales, marketing, leadership within the organization, and administrative. Right? It seemed like we were hiring, firing, office drama, booking travel, scheduling the things, ordering supplies. And so it was really important that we get somebody that could take the HR/admin finance stuff off the plate. And so that's where we got a kind of a marketing assistant/office assistant, somebody that could just take me, Dean's, overflow tasks, the things that were low value, but really important, it had to get done. And we placed that. And that freed us up to focus more strategically on the company. And then ultimately, kind of around the $2 million a year mark, we had a lot of the key things in place. We had an operations team that was doing the work. We had account managers that were managing the relationships. We had some administrative support to make sure that the important details weren't falling between the cracks. And so most of my time was on sales, right? I was taking sales calls, having those great sales conversations, teeing up the opportunities, and then handing them off to the account management team, and then handing that off to the delivery team. And that was when we made the decision to put a salesperson in place. We went through a number of different salespeople over the years, but the salesperson we have now has been just fantastic. Started with one salesperson that was a closer, basically stepped in, learned how to sell the services, how to take prospects through the consultative sales process, basically the closer, so to speak, and full-time responsibility, just taking sales calls, closing deals, following up on unconverted opportunities, keeping the pipeline full. And what was amazing was once I had removed myself from sales, I was no longer directly involved in any aspect of the business. It's a really beautiful place that I hope everybody arrives at some point, where you truly become the leader within the business and not just a worker within the business. Because you think about it, marketing's happening, sales are being made. I'm not on those calls. Sales are happening. Once the sale is closed, it's being flipped to the launch coordinator who gets on the meeting and gathers the details and kick things off. And then all those details get pushed out to our operations team that builds the website, does the SEO, sets up the campaigns, manages and optimizes the results. And then the account manager manages that relationship on an ongoing basis. Literally, the company can grow without me personally having to do it. We still had multiple iterations of this because it's like, okay, we got these people, but they're coming to us for everything. And now we're overwhelmed with drama. We're overwhelmed with logistics. We're overwhelmed with management of the team. And it was when we implemented EOS, the Entrepreneur's Operating System, and started to put the right structures in place where, there's an organizational chart, there's a meeting rhythm, there's rocks and goals being set every single quarter. We started to have a leadership team that was innovating in each of the different areas within the business, and a pulsing rhythm that kept things on the rails with KPIs and key metrics that everybody tracked against. And I think once we did that, that was when we really saw an acceleration from that $2 $2 million to $5 million and beyond. And while the company continued to grow, I was able to be more free to do the things I wanted to do. I had a young family. Currently, my kids are 3, 7, and 10, and that's been a growing family. I also, around the second year in plumbing and HVAC SEO, started Seven Figure Agency, which is my passion project, showing other digital marketing agencies how they can position themselves as the expert within a niche, get clients come to them. And that organization has grown to hundreds of members and really a multiple seven-figure business that Sandy and I run together. That's only possible because we put the systems, the procedure, and the infrastructure in place so that the plumbing and HVAC SEO organization can deliver world-class results without us having to do it all ourselves. So that's my full journey from struggling two-person agency to a $7 million per year business with nearly 50 employees. I tell you this not to brag, but to show you what's possible with the right blueprint. If you're serious about hitting 7 figures with your agency using the same blueprint that over 150 other marketing agencies have used as well, then click the first link in the description and book your free agency acceleration call. On that call, we'll dive deep into your agency, identify the biggest opportunities for growth, and give you a roadmap that you can use to start scaling to 7 figures today. So book your free call, and we'll talk to you soon.